Here's your coffee.
Great. Finished. Could do with the second one.
Is magic like a Melbourne thing?
I think it is.
I know one other guy that orders magic.
I got introduced to it, actually.
That's how it kind of happens.
Yeah. Curious with the name.
So what is it?
I think it's a double ristretto with a shot of milk.
With a shot of milk. So it's pretty much just coffee.
It is pretty much coffee. No, but coffee with, I think, that much amount of milk.
Cool, man. Let's see where we go with this, because I've got no idea where it's going to go. But
let's see where it goes.
Let's roll. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Robert Baharian, and this is Masters in Investing. On this show, I talk to guests about financial markets, the economy, investing, and business. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us an awesome review. Let's get into it. My guest today is Dhanush Ganglani, investor and managing director of Eden Exchange, an online marketplace looking to democratize business transactions by bringing together buyers and sellers of businesses all around the country. During our conversation, we talk about scaling up businesses. Dhanush talks about the ingredients required to go from idea to execution. He also gives us insight into the previous business he was involved in, where he helped grow a private family-led company to become a real global leader in the industry. We talk about self-reflection and truth, and facing the truth as it relates to business, as it relates to entrepreneurship, and as it relates to us as people and us as human beings. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Let's get into it. So we met like 4 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say that.
4 years ago?
Four and a bit. Yeah, just about 4 years ago.
You were one stubborn prick 4 years ago.
I was.
Are you still a stubborn prick?
Very much so. Part of the DNA.
So, mate, what I want to talk about today is you've been involved in a number of different businesses in different industries, let's say, but I think at the core of it all, it's kind of business in your DNA. There's, if you like, lateral and commercial thinking about how to maybe structure a deal or how to manufacture a deal and execute the deal to maximize return on that. I saw, even though I've known you for a number of years now, and I know we kind of laugh, and sometimes I reluctantly tell people that maybe we met at a Tony Robbins event, or in fact that I ever attended
a Tony
Robbins event.
Yeah.
But like for me, I think that was personally a really pivotal experience. I suspect it's very similar.
Yeah, I think it was for me too. Yeah,
for you as well. What was the one thing? Like, we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But what was the thing for you, like, that you took out of that 1 week with, I don't know how many thousands of people, being surrounded by people that are just super eager and just going wild for a week, but also at the same time learning? Like, what did you take out of that? What was a key highlight for you?
I think the key highlight with the date with Destiny was just, I think there was a moment at some stage where you are suddenly confronted with the man in the mirror, and that man in the mirror moment is one of absolute reflection, and you get to see who you really are and what potential you really have. And also it allowed me to explore a lot of avenues that were within me, but not something I was willing to address. So I found that the ability to go and address them was the confronting piece, and it's from that confrontation and overcoming it that you reach a place of true self-reflection. So I think that's really what I got, and the evidence of that self-reflection came from the relationships I really developed. So you would normally not. I normally think of myself as an extrovert and an ability to develop relationships, but a lot of the times you feel relationships get developed on a very superficial level, or there's always a motivation behind why you develop a relationship. But really, what I found coming out of that was the relationships we formed, and over these years, we're constantly in touch. And if you ever reflect upon that, a lot of our interactions are just purely on the basis of a connection, more than anything else. And I think that's one of the testaments of a reflective moment in terms of who you are and what purpose you're looking at to connect with people.
And
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think do you then think that stripping everything back and getting to the core of that relationship or connection is the true connection, rather than layers upon layers of things that you eventually find some nexus with, whereas it's it's beneath the surface?
Yeah, I think you think a lot about who you are. You think a lot about what people think you are. You're constantly thinking about, when you're managing things, you're constantly thinking about a lot of things as opposed to the problem at hand or the issues at hand that you need to deal with. There's a whole perception piece that sits as a layer above what you're trying to do, and that perception influences a lot of what you do. And the ability to try and peel that perception away to really focus on a problem, it's easier said than done. And sometimes a program such as those, or many other programs where you go to self-reflection, allows you to peel those layers away to get to the heart of what really makes you function. And I find that when you tap into that, the energy you get, the connections you get, the clarity you get in terms of the next steps is an unbelievable one.
I think you're absolutely right. Mate, the reason why I wanted to talk to you was up until recently, you were involved in a private family company in a certain industry that grew from family values and running the business more or less, from what I understand, as a family business. You got involved. The company has since become one of, if not the largest in its industry. In fact, I think it was in July, just after COVID hit, I saw your face on, I think it was the Australian or the AFR.
The Australian,
I can't remember. But I'm really curious to understand, from having helped grow a company from where the company was to where it is today, and I understand you're no longer with that company. Notwithstanding that, though, I'd love to understand more about how you shift and scale and grow a business from its beginnings or at its earliest stage to becoming a real global company in its own right. Can you give us some insight into that journey?
Yeah, sure. Look, this was an opportunity that came my way, and I'm grateful and thankful for the opportunity that came my way. And this was the opportunity to join a family-run business in which the leader of that business was visionary in terms of where he wanted to take the business. But a lot of people and I'm sure a lot of the listeners and a lot of people would reflect, if they've had the experience of working in family businesses, that family businesses are typically run by key members of the family. And
they may not necessarily be good at that thing.
They may not be great at it. But the idea and their intention behind purpose is always strong, and they always want to see the business reach its true potential. But very few family businesses know what it means to make sure you continue to retain the values of the family, but yet ensure the commercial and structural models of the business is structured to allow it to reach its true potential. You always get confused before. You're always confused over, is this, this is a family business. I'm the only one that's going to be able to care for it. I'm the only one that knows what's best for this business.
Do you think that's true? Do you think other people coming in, such as yourself, into a family business, care for it and really live and breathe it, and it runs through your blood system like the family members?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you get the right people with the right passion and the right skills that believe in the vision, and I think this is what's important, right? I think it's the vision that the family sets. And this particular business that I had the privilege of working with, the owner of the business, the leader of the business was is still a very passionate and driven individual who has a very large vision for what he wanted from the business. And what was very encouraging from the onset was he was prepared to do what was necessary to see that family business reach its true potential. And even if that meant he had to get out of the way, or he had to ensure that whatever was getting in the way was those obstacles were removed to allow such businesses to flourish, he was prepared to do it. So, I mean, when you come to that point, it's all about how do you set up the structure and the fundamentals of the business to be able to scale. So what I mean by that is, if you're running a family business where there's no structure, you know, the decision-making process is very, is restricted to a few, and those few may not even be the best to make those decisions, or there's a bureaucracy that's there in the decision-making
or even
process.
Lack of structure.
Or lack of structure. All of this impacts how the business runs. But when you start to introduce an ability to say this, which is the ingredients of building a good business and a family business are the same thing, it's people. So at the end of the day, if you're able to get the right people on board that commit to that vision and are willing to follow a structure and discipline towards fulfilling that business's strategy, more than likely you'll see it succeed. And the vision of a leader. So you need that. I think the ingredients are, you need a vision of a leader, but then what you really need is a team and the ability to execute. And an executionary piece is what is typically missing in this space.
Why is it missing typically?
Well, because the executionary piece can sometimes just remain with people that may not necessarily be skilled to execute. And there are people out there that have extremely strong executionary skills that you would want to deploy in your business. And these guys are not people that are dumb. They're smart people. So if you want to get them to contribute, and the very fact that you brought up that you want them to still live and breathe and feel passionate about it, well, the only way you're going to get people's passion is if you allow them to contribute in a manner that doesn't feel it's restricted. You want to tap into their smartness. Yeah, your team. You want to build that, and you want to take them through the journey of realizing that vision. And they need to be so. That's why it's important to have. If you're going to hire such people to execute, then you got to know that they're not dumb. They're very smart people, and they're driven, and they're giving you their time to come in and have bought into that vision. You have to have the ability to allow them to execute to their best.
How do you know someone, or how do you know when your team has genuinely bought into the vision? Because I could sit here all day talking to you about why I think this is important or why that's important. Like and you sit there nodding your head, yes, man, yeah, Rob, that's absolutely right. Like, how do I know that? I mean, there may not be an answer to that, but I'm curious.
I think you know that. I know a lot of people might say you know that when you see the results, etc. And I think that's not entirely true. I think you know that when you start to see physical evidence of how your team comes together. And I'll give you a great example of this. Last year, it's taken a long time to build the team and the leadership team that we had, and I believe that we had. And there were many that joined and many that left. Now, nothing like knowing how good your leadership team is unless no better time to know how good your leadership team is like a crisis.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And the crisis is what eventually dictates how that team is. And last year when COVID hit and this pandemic was just beginning to surface, the amount of uncertainty that was there was I'm sure every business around Australia, and in fact the whole world, was facing. You just didn't know, let alone what the next 6 months looked like.
Sure.
You didn't know what the next 3 months looked like. And when this pandemic hit and we were now facing the real situation of lockdown and the ability to now start to look at revenue stopping and looking at the real dials of the business that you worked so hard to turn are now dialing back the other way. And you're fundamentally now driven with two choices. One, do you start to just look at the dials of the business, or do you really start to focus on the people? And a team's coming together is when the leadership team gets together to say, hey, look, happy to start to restructure the business to plan for what this uncertainty is. And when we're looking at what the restructure is, let's not look at it from the ground up. Let's look at it from the starting of the top. And when we looked at the starting at the top, the leadership group said, even before we look at what we need to do in terms of cost cutting and all the other elements that we need to now start to consider, the first thing the leadership group has said, if there's anyone that's going to take any pay cuts, it's going to be us. If there was a first line to start to look at before we get a handle on what the pandemic looks like, was the leadership group unequivocally put their hand up to say,
which is quite the opposite to what happens
I think so.
In many other businesses.
Absolutely. And we did that as the first line before we even started to talk about others. And that's the concept that we've always followed, which is leaders eat last. In this instance, this was a great example of that. So when you talk about a team that is doing that, it's not just someone that's symbolically doing that. So, it's symbolically, it's easy to say, hey, I'll take a pay cut and great. I believe that being in that room showed me not the fact that they were being symbolic to do that. What they really showed was the passion and the care that they had for that business, and to see it succeed was what was louder. And you saw
the commitment.
And the commitment. No greater commitment than someone saying, take it from me first. I'll be the first to go, right? It's that guy who's sitting in the trenches and you're trying to tell your troops to go out into battle and face it, but you're the first guy to say, hey, I'm going, follow me. Nothing like that. And this was truly that moment. And I can tell you that was an absolute, it was a moment to witness. And I was privileged to witness that moment with that team. And you could see the results of what came from that. Not only did we come out of that pandemic, come out of that situation the better, we grew revenue, almost doubled our revenue in a span of 5 months. That's the article you're referring to. We found ourselves to unlock other sources of revenue that we normally did not have. And we were able to leverage on the strengths that we did. And you would only be able to leverage off the strengths from such a opportunity if you've not spent the last how many ever years building such an infrastructure. So that's the true test, really. It's not about, hey, I've got a great team and they work well and they communicate, they talk, and, look at how good we are, and there's a lot of patting your backs and, all of that. No, really, it's a crisis. And when you look at that and say, what have you been doing for the last 4 or 5 years? And you go, hey, you know what? I've built a supply chain infrastructure that's world class, that sometimes would have defied any commercial rationale to why would you spend so much time and quality in making sure you have a diversified supply chain and ensuring that you're able to deliver no matter what, ensuring you're living values where, your problems, not your customers, etc. And you think these are all great things to say, but then when you're hit with a pandemic and saying, wow, my revenues are down, let's test you to see, do you really believe in those values? And when you see your team stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to impact our people first, we're going to impact the leadership group first and then see how we go. And then let's look at not looking at the problem, but looking at what we can do to leverage from this problem. It's a complete different pivotal shift in consciousness to do that. And that shift is what I refer to as the element of looking at a leadership group and building that skill and seeing the ability to execute.
I think the whole concept of a crisis really defying or testing a team or a business or whatever the case may be. We talk to a number of different investment and money managers that everyone speaks very highly of themselves, and also to your point, it wasn't until the crisis of 2020 when the world came literally to a grinding halt that people managing other people's money had promised this, and when times are tough, this is where we really shine. And that's when you see the bullshit.
That's when
the blinds open and you see what's going on, you realise that being the true test, which is in times of crisis, in times of difficulty, confusion, that is the test. And I think if you can withstand that, you should swim through the good times, right? Like that should be relatively easy.
Who you are in your bad times is who you truly are. That truly comes out, right? I think when you see how people respond in their bad times is the true test of character. I think that's the test of character.
You made a comment before about talking about leaders and visionaries and whatnot, and you said before something along the lines of he was prepared to even get out of the way if that's what needed to happen. Like, what do you think needs to happen for someone to realise that actually I can sit here and blame everybody else, or maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one that is stopping progress. Maybe I'm the one that's prohibiting growth. Maybe I'm the one that is not allowing others to flourish. Like what goes through someone's mind that allows them to then identify that, or them being potentially the issue?
You mean what goes through their mind?
Yeah. Have you ever felt or been in a position where you felt like, shit, I need to get out of my own way?
Yeah,
I'm prohibiting myself.
Yeah, I think numerous amount of times. I mean, to the point around a visionary, see, the thing is this: if the outcome to success is centrally revolving around you, you'll never get out of the way. If the outcome of success is towards the people, towards a greater goal, that isn't centrally focused around you, you'll come to the realization eventually that you may be the problem, or maybe you are inhibiting, you're holding them back. That is a natural process you'll go through on the proviso that you are clear on what does the outcome look like. So if the outcome is you want to get the best return for yourself, how can you remove yourself from that? You can't. You can't. So
because you are part of it all.
Correct. So when you're running a business as well, that business is an extension of you. Now, if you're looking at that business as being something that's going to fulfill an outcome for you, you'll never get out of the way. How can you? Because it's doing something for you. You have you have to physically be there to enjoy the fruits of the spoils, right? So how are you going to ever get out of the way? And whatever that outcome may be good for you, and you might achieve it. But then when you look around, it may not have achieved that for anybody else. So you've done a good job. You did what you wanted to do. But when you're looking at an outcome that doesn't have you in the center of it, and I mean the center, so you are still part of the outcome, but you're not the center of the outcome. And when you recognize you're not the center of the outcome, then you will invariably come through a process that will allow you to have a moment of reflection of whether you're part of the problem or part of the solution. And depending on what you are, you'll know what course of action to take.
What do you think drives us to be, or motivates us to be part of or the center of the outcome? What is it? Is it ego? What is it that makes us feel like we have to do it? No one else can do it.
Well, I was reading a book that said, this is written back in the 1900s or something, and about how to get along with people or something like that. I can't remember what the name is. But one of the points he makes is 99% of people are only interested in one thing, themselves. So the challenge of trying to remove yourself is easier said than done. It's not easy.
100%.
Right? Yep. But how do you do it? I think it's not easy to explain. How do you go? There's no real process or recipe of how you remove yourself. It comes back down to, what are you trying to achieve? Seriously, what are you trying to achieve? until you're clear on what you're trying to achieve. From there, will you be able to then decipher whether you're like I said, whether you're part of the problem or part of the solution.
But presumably, to your point before about, you said the Tony Robbins event was like a staring at a man in the mirror moment. Presumably, you mentally need to and internally accept that you are willing to look at whatever is put in front of you. And
So
be very open about.
Yeah, so I think in terms of how do you go about that process, I'd say the first things to think about going through that process is, do you have the ability to invest in yourself? That's the first process I would tell. I would probably advise is, do you have the ability, and when I mean invest in yourself to exploring why do you, who are you? Why do you function? What your purpose in life is, and going into that element of yourself. Because if you go through that exploration piece, there will be a lot of insightful experiences that you will obtain. And I believe it's from those insightful experiences that you will begin to understand what you're trying to achieve. And in a commercial sense, when you're working in a business, you begin to recognize that what you're doing in business has a lot to do with what you do as a person. And when you start to invest in yourself in that way, you'll begin to realize that in business as well, you begin to, how do I say this? I don't know how to say this.
If you knew how to say it, how would you say it? While that's coming to your mind, let me ask you another question then. Do you think our outer world is simply a reflection of our inner world?
Oh, without a doubt. Actually, well put. Well put. The outer world is a reflection of our inner world.
And so,
in many ways.
And so if that is true, and if that is the case, we to some extent can control the outer world by controlling our inner world.
Yeah, I don't think you could control the outer world as much as you can control the inner world, I think.
But if your inner world is if the outer world is a reflection of your inner world.
Yeah, if you're in sync, yes. But I don't think a lot of us are.
What do you mean by in sync?
If you're in sync, if your outer world and inner world are in sync in the sense as in how you operate internally is exactly how you operate externally, then yes, probably you can't control the outcomes, but you can definitely control how you deal with outcomes.
Sure, 100%.
And that dealing with, and I think a lot of the issues that come up is in the how you deal with outcomes.
Yeah.
How you deal with the situation.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's the only thing you can control is your response to your reaction to.
Whether you want to react or respond. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you distinguish to react or respond?
How do you distinguish between reacting and responding? Well, a lot of the times I find myself reacting to a lot of things, and I think I've seen that how that works versus I can tell you how you respond. What was the question? Just how do you
distinguish?
How do you distinguish? I can tell you how you distinguish by looking at what happens from
in hindsight.
In hindsight, that tells you how it works.
But how good's that, right? Like you can sit there and reflect on things that have unfolded or happened and reflect on how you responded or reacted to that. But I think that goes that speaks to this whole point of being open about looking at the truth of you as an individual, as a business person, as a human being. If you're not prepared to do that, then you'll always find a circumstance or a reason to blame something for something that didn't play out the way you wanted it. And I think there's this saying that goes something along the lines of, if you plan something and it didn't go your way, it's bad luck. But if you did something and it went the way you expected, it's skill. Yeah. So it's this distinction between, luck and skill. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about before, which is if you're at the center of everything everything that you do or everything that needs to happen, then I just feel like selfishly, we're going to blame others, and when things go well, we're going to take the credit for it. I think that's a really important thing you've raised, which is the identification of who's actually getting in the way. I think that's totally underestimated. Knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at, how your ex-leader or visionary, let's call him, what he was able to do, and instead of taking credit for himself, he's able to support others and get out of the way for the greater good. One of the things I've been really curious about, I think you and I have talked about this before, is this concept of sometimes doing something, whether it's running a business or doing a project, and it just feels like it's all happening with ease. And then other times you do it and it just feels like you're pushing shit uphill for a long time. And when doing so, you continue to tell yourself this story and this narrative in your own mind about, why it's hard and why it's not working or whatever the case may be. Like, why do you think that is? Why do you think that in business or in whatever it is that we're doing, there are some things that just flow and happen really easily, and others that really just feel like it's a lot of hard work for not much return? And the return can be both financial and both non-financial in terms of personal satisfaction, a bigger impact on the people around you, or whatever the case may be. It's that distinction between, like, why is shit so hard, man, sometimes? Like, why do you think that's the case?
I think that's part of the journey of exploring who you are. A lot of the times, how are you going to know something flows really well and something doesn't flow really well? It's only when you start to do it do you really realize what's flowing and what's not flowing. And this whole element of what's flowing, and you're right, that happens so many times in our lives when some things just feel so right and you're doing it and there's just no resistance to it and it just happens so easily, and every element of it feels like an absolute joy and seamless, versus some things just seem to be so painful that even the most basic things that you want to do of it is so painful. And you go, why do I even do it? And then when you look at, from a commercial perspective, reward to the return, and return being the return you'll get, the reward to the risk, or reward to the effort, you look at certain things that you're putting so much effort into, and the reward, either be it a happiness factor or a dollar factor, it doesn't stack up to the effort. That I think that happens a lot of the times because you're not certain, you're not true to yourself at times. That resistance comes from you. You look at it, and sometimes that resistance comes also from you don't like doing it, but you still are doing it. So if you ever look at your frame of mind when you're doing something like that, you don't like doing it, but you are doing it for some purpose. Now you don't know, a lot of the times you don't even know why you're doing it. Right? But you're still doing it. And it's when you look back at it, you go, why was I doing that rubbish? Because I didn't get enough from it, put myself through all of that pain and didn't get in, when actually, why don't I just do more of what I enjoy? That, I think, very, very, very few people reach that point of realization to say, I'm happy to stop doing what I don't like and I'm happy to do it because I really love that. That, a lot of people say when you find, I think, what's that other saying, that when you do something that you love, it's no longer a job. It's just living life or something. I mean, that's what everybody's trying to tell you how to get to. But I think it comes back down to your ability to recognize what you're good at and what you love doing, what you're good at, versus what you're not good at and you don't love doing it, but you're doing it anyway. And the most simplest example is you can go and get a job that's paying you $200,000. You hate the bloody goddamn job. You hate who you're working with. You hate the industry. But you've got a degree in it, and you think you can do it. And on paper, you're qualified to do it. And day in and day out, you keep doing it, and you keep telling yourself, "Yeah, but I'm earning. It's the money that's the motivational factor." Whereas, you might be really good at something completely different that you truly enjoy, that may not be the monetary aspect that you're... So I think it actually, as I'm talking to you, I'm beginning to realize it probably is the currency that you associate the reward to be.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You know, that currency. So if you're saying the currency is X to this reward, and that currency is the wrong currency, and you measure it against that, you're not going to get what you want. So if you're saying I want happiness, and the currency is the money that I use to value that happiness, and then you say, but the effort to get that money is this, so the effort is justified, but the effort is really depleting the true currency you're trying to fulfill, which is the happiness 100%. Element.
Yep.
So you see, you're putting all this hard work thinking, because I'm going to get the money and then the money is going to make me happy. Right? But actually you're trying to do it to be happy. So why don't you just do it whatever you need to be happy? What's the currency got? What's the money got to do with it?
It's easier said than done, right?
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Mate, can we... You're now involved in a startup. Can we start talking about that a little bit? Because I think you're quite passionate about that, and I'd love to understand and talk to you about the skills and the expertise that you brought from a family business, to becoming a global leader in its industry, to now coming into this business. And I think you guys started off with a couple of people, and I think super quick you got 9 or 11 people,
about 14 and growing.
14 people now. In a very short space of time. So, mate, give us a rundown of what you're doing now with the startup that you're involved in.
Yeah, sure. So this, you rightfully pointed out, I'm passionate about this one because it's close to, it resonates with what I enjoy doing. So this particular startup that I've invested in is called Eden Exchange, and the purpose behind Eden Exchange is, and in my years of running businesses, owning businesses, buying and selling businesses, I've always, when I was very young, I owned a franchise as well. So I know what
did you own?
It was a crepe franchise going back 20 odd years when I was working in the banking. Yeah. That I thought I wanted to get into
the crepe business.
Yeah, and it was something unique and have a look at it. So this entrepreneurial flavor to always try businesses has always been in my DNA. I come from a family of business, so I mean, I feel it runs in my DNA. But this business, Eden Exchange, what I have seen in my experience of 20 odd years in trying to in the business sector is this ability to buy and sell businesses is a dark place. It's not very clear, right? There's no rule to it. There's no rule around what should you pay for a business, what you should. There are criteria and there are assessments, and there are many people that will tell you it's worth this, etc. Right? But when you look at the small to medium businesses and you look at those,
you just use Square as an example of the Afterpay takeover.
Right.
It's like how many people are crying over the fact that it's an overvalued company that makes no money. Meanwhile, here comes Square paying billions of dollars to take the damn company over.
Yeah.
I think there's more factors that contribute to a valuation than just your accounting metrics.
Absolutely. So I think absolutely right. And try to translate that to people who are in the small to medium businesses, the guys who run cafes, the guys who run lawn mowing businesses, that run practices like aged care, like daycare centers. Like there are just so many small businesses out there that people run, but when you ask them the process of what they had to go through to buy a business or to start a business or to look at eventually sell a business, everybody knows that the process of buying a business and selling a business is an absolute nightmare, and it's not one that's easy. What Eden Exchange is looking at doing is this startup is looking at allowing people, we're building a market-based platform that allows business buyers and sellers to come into a unique ecosystem where we're able to help you find...
Are you independent?
Yes. So we're agnostic. Right. We're agnostic to any industry. What we want to do is we want to...
As in you're an independent central marketplace.
Yes, we're an independent central marketplace, and all we're aiming to do is to try and bring transparency into the process.
Right.
So right now, what is that process? How do you go through it? What are the steps that are involved in buying or selling a business? I think there are many advisors out there, and there are many information. We're not seeking to advise, but what we're seeking to do is shed the light and bring in transparency and to build an ecosystem that allows buyers and sellers to connect in an ecosystem in a safe, trusted and verified way, where we can instantly get the buyer who's looking for a business and that's looking to buy or sell, even sellers who are looking at selling their business, to be able to connect in an ecosystem and be able to exchange information in a safe manner, and even connect with other parties that they need help with, brokers, advisors, etc., that need to assist with the transaction. You can, you have the choice to see whether you want to engage with a broker, and what does that process look like. If you don't want to and you want to sell it yourself, what does that process look like, etc. What we're aiming to do is to try and build a network that connects buyers and sellers to be able to do that transparently.
So I've got a business, I want to sell it, I list it with you. Tell me if I'm wrong here. And then you've got buyers who are browsing through the different types of businesses. Yep. We connect, and then can I share financial information with you in a, when you talk about secure way, what does that mean? What's stopping you from collecting that information and disclosing the information? Are there NDAs done?
Yeah, so we go through the normal process of non-disclosure agreements, and there are many, and this is what I mean, that a lot of people who owns a coffee shop doesn't know what an NDA looks like, and what does that mean, and what rights do I have, and what information do I have. So we're not seeking to, what we're seeking to do is open that process up, share that process openly, but mainly what we're trying to do is, what business do you want to buy? What's your criteria for buying a business? Let's help you find a business that meets that criteria, and let us ensure that it's almost like what we're looking at, what Eden Exchange is aiming to do. It's like a matchmaking arrangement, right? It's a dating app for business. Yeah. So when you're looking at that, you're looking for a certain type of business, you have a certain criteria, we'll help you find the business that meets that criteria. Nothing better than you buying a business that you truly wanted and that met the criteria that you have, as opposed to just buying a business that you think meets your criteria. You don't know what the process is. You went and bought it anyway. You didn't know what the right value is that you should pay, or to be informed in any way of what else other options that you can have before you make that decision. So what we're looking at doing is empowering buyers and sellers to come together in a unique ecosystem that allows you to connect and exchange information and ideas, and to look at the possibility of doing a deal.
It sounds really interesting. I'd be really curious to see how things start to develop as the technology develops, as you have more data in your system, etc. I want to wrap up soon. One question I do have, though, is with your team, how do you continue to motivate them? Because I'm sure as people come, people also go. How do you find trying to continuously engage them and also help them understand that being involved in a new business, whether it's a small startup or a larger business or whatever the case may be, stuff just doesn't happen like in a week. Shit takes long time, and sometimes you're shifting processes now. Next week it's something different. Do you think there's some resilience that some people have and just some people don't?
Yeah, again, it comes back to who you hire and all of that. But really, no. I think when you're building a startup, especially in this one, one of the ingredients I'm committed to in this business is transparency. So within our team, we're very transparent around what we're doing. And when I mean transparent, we share everything within that team. The rationale for the strategy, the direction, the roadmap, the numbers, where we're at. We don't sit and do things in closed doors and then implement that with the team. So when you find
where the leadership team segregated.
Yeah, so we do this, and this is the decisions we've made. What I find is when you are able to bring people into the tent and allow them to participate and ensure there's a free flow of information between everybody, you actually find commitment and drive and passion, and the ability to buy into the vision becomes a natural outcome. And how do you do that? It's simple ingredients. Every day we have a morning huddle every morning. We ensure that there's a weekly catch-up that discusses certain agenda items in a transparent manner. The ability for people to understand and question things that are happening are done in a safe way. You have the ability to come up to any one of us to question what we're doing, to look at what we're doing, the reason behind
You could say that though. Like, how do you instill that? How do you give people the confidence and the assurance that it's actually okay to do that? It's okay.
By leading from the front. So you see, when I have when I'm in these meetings, I ensure that there's no amount of information that I share that's sensitive. What I mean by sensitive, not your personal information, but sensitive to the business. Because once you're in the family, you're in the family. So I'm going to tell you everything. And I find that ability to be open to your people gives them confidence that if my leader is open and happy to share in such a way,
sure,
then I think you find that others feel comfortable enough to do it as well.
Yeah. Here. Let's wrap it up, man. Good to chat with you.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.